And we are live with Vineet from Lead Labs. Uh, so Vineet and I met at the SaaSCon event. Vineet and his team had this booth at the event, and I think one of our customers, we had a common customer, and they introduced us to each other. And the product was instantly like the banners that you had, the way you had set up the booth, it was just very instantly, okay, this is what they do. It was very instantly understandable. What do you do? How does that help? And then we just ended up, I think, having a conversation of you potentially working with us, and then we partnering, and then here we are,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, thank you so much for doing this.
Sure, basically, right. So this was wonderful, like, talking to you guys back at SaaSCon, like learning more about like Spear Growth, so how you're helping your clients, like, so nail their GTM as well. Yeah, basically, like, so it was like a wonderful conversation. Yeah, so then like me and Dishan, like we just caught up again. Yeah, so now we are a partner with Spear Growth as well. Yeah, so it's been like this is exciting. So this is how just like 1 2 minute meeting can just like take you places. So yeah, again, yes, and just like keep networking as much as you can.
Awesome. So, Vineet, how about this, right? To just to start off, can you maybe just introduce yourself uh, before we get into it?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Vineet, and I'm the founder of Lead Labs. What we do at Lead Labs is like we are a buyer engagement tool, wherein like we help B2B sales teams to understand their buyers during the course of the sales cycle. So that is all the way from prospecting to the point of like closing the deals. We help you understand your buyers so that like you can close deals faster and with better win rates, as well as like you can book more meetings with your ICP with the help of hyper personalized microsites.
Nice. Cool. So today's topic, right, is all about just LinkedIn outbound, which is hyper personalized. So
Yes.
we've just at Spear Growth, right? We've just fun fact for over 2 years. So Spear Growth is like 2.5 years old at this moment, and we have we just hadn't done outbound for us for over 2 years of our journey,
Mm.
right? We've just relied 100% on inbound, and we had a pretty good run, and then we were almost forced to start outbound 3 months ago when the market crashed, right? So we
Mm.
were like, okay, we need a good mix of everything.
Correct.
Now, with that being said, um, I am actually looking to learn a lot on how to maybe improve our entire outbound process, how to start. So basically, I want to discuss today is like, okay, what does it look like when you start? Um, then what does it look like as you scale? And then how do you, once you've already scaled it, it's working well. How do you optimize it at the end of it, right? Right, those are the three things I really want to ask of you today, right? So let's start with the first one. Like, how do you, like, it's be a growth, right? So we want to start our outbound. Like, how do we start? Like, what's the first thing that we do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So basically, if you see, so for somebody that has never done LinkedIn outbound, so first I would like to say, what is LinkedIn outbound first and everything. So we know that, like, obviously, LinkedIn is a professional platform where you connect with other like-minded leaders, or basically you connect with your target market. So what you do here, so in terms of outbound, is like you have never really met that person before, but like you're reaching out to them with a purpose. And that's the main thing to keep in mind, is that you're not here to pitch your product mainly, because that spoils the purpose of LinkedIn in a way. So you're here to connect with them and network. And basically, if a reason arises to pitch your product, you then pitch it. So that is what differentiates the people that are doing outbound well and the person that is not doing outbound in the right process again. Remember that you're always reaching out to another human after all in the end. So nobody wants to get pitched day in, day out again. So that is the main thing that we want to remember. Yeah. And so that said, so like how we start out. So
I'll
that's a good
I'll just ask based on what you said, right? I'll just cut you off and ask you a follow up question then, right? So then, what's the KPI for outbound then, right? So
question.
is getting like X number of demos not the KPI if you're not selling?
So that's a really good question. So what I would say, the most important KPI that you should be that you should be looking at is the number of conversations that you have with the prospect, and not exactly the number of demos booked as such. So because you could have really good conversation with them but not book a demo right away, so they could be a potential prospect for the next quarter. But the moment you start pitching in and asking them for a demo, you probably lose that prospect in the next quarter. So because not everybody is in the market to buy the product right away or the service that you're selling right away. So make sure that you start as many conversations as possible. So make sure, yeah, suppose if you know somebody that they could introduce you to, so let's ask them to introduce you, and so on again. So basically, so in my personal yeah, so my personal opinion is I would measure my KPIs based upon the number of conversations that I start and the quality of these conversations for me.
Understood. So just when we are starting off, right, the first thing that we're looking at, how do you project it, right? Because I have a client target, I can project it back to, let's say, okay, now I know that I need a certain number of SQLs to hit that. I need a certain number of maybe MQLs to hit that, right? I can do this back calculation.
Correct.
Uh, how does a conversation target work?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, so let me start from the perspective of a beginner. So how do you find these people? So how do you target your ICP and so on LinkedIn again? So there are two ways that you can do it. One is by using the free version of LinkedIn, which everybody has access to. So if you create a profile, and the second is to use the Sales Navigator, wherein you get access to more advanced filters as well. So when you're beginning or when you're just dabbling with LinkedIn, so you don't really need a Sales Navigator account. So because of that comes in. So when you want to do prospecting like full time, so when you want to spend like 4 5 hours a day on kind of outbound again. So when you start out with, let's say, the free account, so once you're in the search bar of LinkedIn, you have a bunch of filters over there. So once you type out, let's say, like let's say, so something like okay, so suppose, let's say we want to target founders. So once you type founders, so there's an option called, it's an in people. So basically, so the free account gives you a few things like the geography, and basically so the connections that you're in and the school that you're connected with and so on, because LinkedIn is primarily made for connections. So basically, so what you get on the free plan, yes, or basically what you get on the free account is basically showing you, like, so how big of a potential network that you might have. Again, so which should be sufficient when you start out with, and like, so this is how you craft the list right now. Again, yeah, so once you do that, so let's say you pick up the first 10 people for the conversation or something, but before you even start the conversation, is my suggestion would be is to just like have a look at the profile before you started the conversation. So suppose if somebody, okay, so suppose if I was selling lead labs to someone again, so basically, so I would look, suppose are they doing outbound themselves? I would say. So I would look at that before I reach out to them, and then I would say something like, "Hi, Vineet. Looks like you're into like, outbound sales. Yeah. So basically, so are you looks like able to strike enough conversations with your prospects?" So this is, yeah. So basically, so this is probably like how this is probably like so how I would connect with them. So and like so that is a way where you can start meaningful conversations without like really pitching them and without being salesy as such. So you first identify whether they have a problem or not before you pitch them. So like so this is what differentiates you from most of the people out there, because the number of, so because like, so I personally get about at least 10 messages every single day as a founder, and we see almost like, so everybody sending, yeah, we see almost everybody putting their Calendly link in the first message itself again. So that does not work really well on LinkedIn, because you're asking them for, let's say, 20 30 minutes of the time, and people don't commit to 20 30 minutes of time today. They want to know more about you. They want to know whether if you can really help them or not. And as a seller, you don't even know if they have the problem first. So you might actually book a meeting with them, but like, what if they don't even have the problem and you realize that on the discovery call? So you've just wasted both of your time, in that sense again.
Understood. So step one is creating the list and then understanding about the. So for step one to create the list, you can use Sales Navigator, maybe even other tools like Apollo or Crunchbase or any other tools that you have. So you have the first list done, then you basically go. And you're talking about just manual outreach at the moment. It's not personalized. It's not at scale at the moment, right? Vineet?
Correct. Yes.
So
So
for that,
that
someone has to manually go through every single profile. Somehow you're going to prioritize those. Based on that, then you're going to go through every single profile manually, send them a message. The first message is usually, as you've mentioned, is a question, which is closer to discussing the problem that we solved and the solution that you have. Is that the
absolutely.
summary?
Yes. So what you have summarized it pretty well. So what basically so I would like to add in like a couple of things over here. Is so one thing. So why I suggested manual and not using any automated tool is that you have to be really careful before you use an automated tool for LinkedIn. Because using automation on LinkedIn is actually against their like TNC again. So there are very high chances that your account could be flagged by LinkedIn. You always need to proceed with caution before you can use any automation tool for LinkedIn. So that is the most easiest way you can get banned on LinkedIn again, and you'll never get back your profile again. So that is one thing to look at. And the other thing why list building is so crucial is that with the most recent update on LinkedIn that happened a few months ago, is that you can send only 100 connection requests per week. So LinkedIn got it drastically down because a lot of people, like I said, they were spamming on LinkedIn. It was not really outbound as such. So it was just sharing calendar links with just like so we just like pit slaps on people on LinkedIn again. So
Yeah.
now because you can share only 100 connection requests per week, it is so crucial to really identify your list before you start out again because you have very limited because you have very limited connections again. So basically, this is step one. So where you narrow down your prospect list again. So based upon the offering that you're doing, and so this is really comprising about this should ideally take like 70% of your time. So in my opinion,
Mhm.
because
Understood.
because you can have an amazing product to sell, but if you send it to the wrong person, they won't buy the product. So
Correct.
it's so the money lies in the list here when you do outbound. Is you can have an amazing list but a terrible copy, you will still do well. But so the vice versa does not work out. If you have a terrible list but amazing copy, it does not work again. So make sure
Correct.
that you spend enough time on building the perfect list. So use as many filters as you want and be creative while building out these lists again. So that's my number one tip.
Got it. Perfect. So we have the list now, right? So we have the list that we want to target. We are doing reach outs. What kind of results can we expect initially? Like when we just start off,
Mm.
again, from a conversation, I want to create, let's say, a spreadsheet that, hey, this is how to, what part of my KPIs or what part of my quarterly targets am I hitting or how do I do, from a numbers perspective, how do I understand this?
Yeah. So basically, writing so it essentially boils down to like a simple way. So suppose if you're taking the full leverage of LinkedIn connection requests and everything,
Mhm.
so you can do 400 connection requests per month. So this is the safe amount that you can do. So there are ways to extend that, and basically like we
Sure.
won't be going into that again. So there are 400 connection requests that you can do in a month. So you have your upper limit. So now let's say you want to book about 15 meetings in the month using this number. So now we have to start backtracking again. So if you send 400 connection requests in a month, so a rule of thumb, a good connection rate acceptance is somewhere between 40 to 60%. So this
Okay.
is what so you would want to target. So say at about 50% out of 400 you have actually got connections with 200 people. And when you send connection requests, there are ways to do it as well. So one with personalized note and one is without personalized note again.
Mhm.
So my suggestion would be use a personalized note when something really stands out in their inbox. So don't say, "Hey, looks like you're a CEO in the software industry." it's very obvious for everyone. So that is not a
Yeah.
good connection request, guys. So it does not add any value. So when you want to add a good connection request, so let's say if something
Mhm.
really stood out. So let's say I saw Ishan's post. I can be right. Let's say, hey Ishan, saw this post where you talked on just
Mhm.
how LinkedIn outbound can 3x your replies. So I just love that. So I wanted to connect with you. And now this is
Yeah.
a more full connection request again. So when you put in a personalized note again, so now it strikes conversations immediately. Again, yes. And suppose if you're reaching out to pitch them, so do a blank connection request. So without any personalized note, it yes, like so that works as well. So without any note again, yes. Or sometimes if you want to put in a personalized note as well, so make it open-ended. So don't try to make it salesy. So it could be something like, let's say something like, "Hey Sean, looks like you are trying to do so outbound. Okay, so looks like you have just started outbound, and basically so I could provide you some tips. So mind
Yeah.
connecting. So now you're trying to add some value to the prospect. So like this is a way where you can do it is a value addition connection again. So one is either value addition, and two is suppose if you have observed something that really stood out for you. Yes, and suppose if these two didn't exist, you can go for a blank connection request. So like so, this is the
Got it.
way so you can get a good acceptance rate of somewhere between 40 to 60%. And suppose if the acceptance rate is below 40%, maybe you should, let's evaluate if you are reaching out to the right people, or maybe they are not really connecting with you. So you need to, let's say, evaluate as to why it's below 40% again. So
Understood.
that's
So we
key.
we have the 400 requests per month per profile. Let's say 200 of them accept. Now, how do we turn this 200 into 15 meetings or any number of meetings, essentially?
Yeah. Absolutely. So once people have accepted a connection request, there is a way to know, like, so who actually accepted your connection request, and like, so who didn't. So because so this is actually like one of the biggest, so biggest confusions that I've seen is that like, so people don't know, like, so who has recently accepted the connection request and who have not. So because like LinkedIn recently changed their UI on that. So once when you go into my network, and so you can see all the people that have sent you requests, but there is a small icon which says like which says it's invitations sent. So you can see what all you have sent again. Yes, as well as you can see the people that have recently accepted your connection request as well, so that you can start a conversation with them again. Yes,
Yeah.
and like because we're talking about the connection request, is a safe limit to be on LinkedIn is you can have about anywhere below 200 connection requests sent at, let's say, any given time. So when it goes beyond 200 connection requests, so let's say, so in month one you have sent 400, and about 200 people have accepted and 200 people have not accepted. So which means there are 200 pending requests in that month again. So, yeah, so when you have 200 pending requests say in the month, so it's not safe to share another 400 because you are having a lot of pending requests as well again.
I just checked mine. I have 410 pending requests, but that's
Yeah,
over 3 or 4 or I think 5 6 years. But
correct. So what you can start to withdraw like a bunch of things. Yeah, yeah. So what you can start to withdraw like so a bunch of connection requests that are pending. So because eventually, so like LinkedIn starts to spot unusual activity on your account. So they have really good ways of doing that. So make sure what you do seems human again. So that's the
understood.
way. Yes, and suppose if you're not using any automation tool, you should be fine because whatever you do is human, and just like so LinkedIn has already mapped, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like what a human can do and like what its automation tool can do. So you should be pretty much good. But yeah,
Yeah.
so this is one of the best practices to follow.
So again, there are 200 accepts. Now, one question that I think someone asked was, and I had this also, was that okay? A lot of times people accept the connection request, but they don't really reply, right? So how should you basically be following up then?
Uh, got it. Okay, so let's say okay,
And
so
sorry, one more thing, and how what percentage of people do you think usually do this? Uh,
so you're saying
just
so how many
by the way.
people do like as a reply? So what should be your goal? So in a way, so what you're asking, so some kind of a benchmark on like this reply rates, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Sure. So let me answer that. So the amount of reply rates really depends on your copy, so that you are sending people with again. So like I said, so it's a very broad spectrum again. So what something I would say is terrible, something below 5%. Below 5% is terrible, so you need to really work on that.
Yeah.
And somewhere between 5 to 15%, okay, so you're getting somewhere, so which is good. So there is room for optimization. And if you're doing anywhere between 15 to 40%, yeah, I think you're doing so you're doing better than, I can say, 90% of the people out there on LinkedIn in terms of like reply rates again. So what you should be aiming for is ideally, like when you begin with, somewhere around the 10 to 15% mark. So basically, so as a beginner, so basically for let's say every 10 messages that you send, you would probably want to get about 1 to 2 reply rate. Yeah, it's about like 1 to 2 replies. So that would essentially mean about 200 people have accepted. You send 200 messages. About like 15% would be about like, so 30 conversations that you have struck up with. So again, so basically, so that can be like a KPI that you can keep in mind. So but like I said, so how do you get them to reply more again? So like I said, one is the copy. So basically, so have you made it salesy or not? Ask yourself. If somebody,
Mhm.
so always do this, if somebody send this to you, would you reply back? So yes,
Yeah.
and suppose if you said no, don't hit send. It's as simple as that. Yes, and basically the first message, right? Don't try to make it long. So try to keep it under 50 words. So basically, what I always tell people is, hey, if you can't tweet, hit delete.
Correct.
So if you can't tweet your first message, hit delete. So rewrite it again. So that's the
Yeah.
rule of thumb. So it's like 100 characters. So because it is short, so when yes, when somebody opens the message, it really gets their attention. So it's small, people actually read it. But like once it goes beyond, let's say 100 words or something, the reply rates plummet down again. So if it is within 50 words, you can expect really good reply rates at about 30-35% if it is relevant to the prospect. And that is another key thing, is relevancy. Okay.
Hmm.
So when you're reaching out, so let's say you have developed the list again, right? So you build based on some filters. So let's say you're reaching out to sales people. Okay, so let's say yes, because I can give an example for let's say like, okay, so say suppose if you're selling a compliance software
Hmm.
and you are targeting founders, right? So what does relevancy mean here is you do your research before you actually build the list, which was important. And now suppose if I have not got, like let's say it's like GDPR compliance. So now if a seller comes to me and say like, so hi Vineet, so just checked out your website and looks like you're not GDPR compliant, right? So like, so is this a priority this quarter? Now
Yeah.
that is relevant to me. So because you have done a key observation, so this is how you get good reply rates, is the observation. Have a clear cut observation as to why you're sending them a message. And this is the make or break. So with a poor observation, it doesn't work. So saying like, why are you reaching out to them? So that is what defines your message after all. So make an observation, and based on that observation, like yeah, suppose if you want to put in a problem, put in the problem, and below the problem, if you can agitate the problem in a sentence, and then do a soft CTA. So don't ask for a meeting, but basically yeah, but basically strike up a conversation instead. So let's say as a founder, I didn't know what GDPR compliance itself was. So something it would be like, so hi, Vinit, so just checked out your website and saw that you're not GDPR compliant yet. But then I don't know why it should be GDPR compliant as well. So you could educate me on that. So basically, like being GDPR compliant could, yes, like could make your software more appealing to the European markets.
Yeah.
Now you're saying like, why I should even consider it again. Yeah, and now we can agitate. And now we can agitate the problem by saying, so by not being GDPR compliant, you're leaving a lot of money on the table for your competitors who are already compliant. And our
Yeah.
soft CTO is not calling me for a meeting, right? So is this a priority this quarter? So you
Yeah.
ask questions that can strike up conversation. So don't ask yes or no kind of questions, because it really does not any strike up any conversation. Because once a person says no, what do you do after that? Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously once a person says sure or yes,
Mhm.
so what happens after that? Okay, so so that's
Sri Prasad basically asked that, okay, once you start the conversation, I think you've sort of answered it already, but once you start the conversation, how long should we wait until we bring up the product? Do we just wait till they ask for that, hey, can you tell me more? Or they, based on the conversation, whatever happens, or is there like a framework to think through this?
Yeah, sure. So that's a really good question again. So say suppose if you have sent out the first message and if people said, "Hey, can I learn more?" So that's where you call them for a meeting because they want to learn more. Hey, like would love to explain more on like a quick 20-minute call. So then you ask for the meeting because they are now interested in what you do. So first understand if they're interested or not before you pitch them. Again, so whatever I said, like so this is a framework that you can try. Is first is the observation, followed by problem, and three is let's agitate the problem, and fourth a soft CTA. Again, so like so this is a way that so that can work to get more reply rates by not being salesy again. So because you're being relevant again. So like so that is one way again over here. And guys, remember, like hyper personalization is not about putting their name or their company details or their industry over here. Hyper personalization is about being relevant. So, and like
Correct.
that is the true sense of what hyper personalization mean. Is like, is your message relevant or not to them? And like, so that is how it works. Yes. And now coming back to like so Sri Prasad's question, like when do you actually pitch in? Is what happens is technically, suppose if they're not replied to you after message one, so now you send out another message by not being really salesy, but again this, so every message that you send, make sure you put in the observation saying why you're reaching out to them. So you can just be
Hmm.
like, so hi, we thought that GDPR compliancy could like so help you expand your markets, and that's why I reached out to you. Do let
Hmm.
me know if this is not a priority right away. So now
Hmm.
you see again, so this message was really not like sales related, but it is more of like this relevant. So you're saying why you're reaching out to them. And again, over here, so that is always the key in LinkedIn outbound, or basically even if you're doing cold emails, is make sure you have the context for the person. So don't make the person to scroll up to understand like why you reached out to them, because I see a lot of people put things like thoughts, hey, like bumping this up to the top of your inbox.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You bumped it to the top of your inbox, but I don't know why you still restart. Now I have to scroll up
Yeah.
again to like, okay, so what did this person want? Why did he send it to me? So don't make your prospect work hard to kind of
Yeah.
send a reply to you again. So because
And
the
so
link,
is that fine that if we say that, okay, within like, let's say after you've started the conversation, within 5 minutes to 10 minutes, or if not 5 minutes, within 5 messages or 10 messages, you can sort of redo it and ask for something like this. Is that like a good, uh,
yeah.
unless they ask for you for it on their own, you can sort of rebump it within 5 to 10 messages. Is that like a good reference to think
So
of?
I wouldn't suggest 5 messages as well. I would suggest 3 to 4 for LinkedIn. So that should
Got
be the maximum limit that you have,
got
because
it.
anyway, so because if they've accepted your request and if they're
Got
not
it.
replied in the 4 messages, they're probably not going to reply anyways. So because
Got it.
LinkedIn messages, almost all messages go to the primary inbox. So hey, so if they're not replied, might as well move on to the next prospect again. So that's the point where you say
Perfect.
kind of and move on.
So, so just very quickly, just sort of, I know we just want to maybe summarize this part because we're almost up on time. So,
Yep.
out of the 30 conversations, how many, even if it's a very broad range, how many meetings can someone expect out of 30 proper conversations through
Right.
this?
Yeah. So say yes. Again, so if these messages were really relevant, you can have more conversation. You could have even 30, 40 conversations as well.
No,
And
but
talk.
if let's say it's 30 conversations, from 30, like how many calls can we expect or scheduled, let's say?
So once you have struck up conversations, if it is done right, and suppose if they're positive conversations, if it is not like, hey, so I'm not the right fit for this and so on. So
Mhm.
let's say if the 30 were positive conversations, you should be aiming for at least 80% conversion to demos, so which means 24 demos. So if you're doing anything less than 80% on a positive conversation, it means that you have not taken the conversation in the right direction again. So maybe you've given out more information than necessary on the message. So which is what a lot of sellers do mistake, is they give out more information than it is necessary. So it is, you keep them interested for the call. So that is the key thing. So if they want to learn more, let's say, hey, like, would a quick 15-minute call be good? Get them on the call. So that's where you can understand more and point them again. So yeah, so that's the rule of thumb. So it should be anywhere between, like, okay, so when you're beginning, probably when you're learning, so it can be anywhere between 50%. 50% should be the base. If you're doing anywhere less than 50%, you really need to, let's say, upskill yourself and, let's say, how to convert the conversation to a successful meeting again. Yeah. So in a way, you can say 15 meetings to 25 meetings, like, should be the goal. Yeah, I suppose for the
So
positive conversations.
understood. And let's say that again, that may depend very, very, like quite a bit based on how well you build the list. Assuming that 20% of your conversations are positive, uh, that is that like a fair assumption on like an average that I can just take?
Yeah, so basically, out of the 30 responses that you get,
Yeah.
yeah, we can assume about positive conversations usually are somewhere between, I can say, 50 to 70%, because the negative conversations, people usually, like, no, so don't send a reply back as no.
Okay.
So because, so which is one, yeah, so it is like one cool thing about like LinkedIn Outbound is, yeah, so most people don't say something like, no, I'm not interested. I mean, very rarely happens. Yeah, so which is why you limit to like 3 to 4 messages on LinkedIn. So but most of them are positive conversations that do keep
Got
happening.
it.
You can say about 50 to 60% are positive.
Got it. So 400 requests per month per profile, 200 accepts at 50% acceptance rate, 10 to 15% conversation like that to conversation rate. Let's say that's about 30 conversations. From there, 50% of those are positive. So that gives us
But 50,
15 positive conversations. Out of that, 80% convo to meeting rate, that gives us close to a little over 10 meetings that you can book with 400 connects a month, right? We are
yeah.
up on time. Just want to ask you very quickly. Uh, so we've had 30 conversations. Sending a connection request, how long does that take? Just summarizing it all. Like once you're used to it, how long should it take to send? Like building a list, you said should take a lot. You should spend a good amount of time doing that. So how long should you? Like just like, I know it's all very subjective. Just
Yeah.
to have some numbers.
Yeah, so it's usually about like now 30 seconds to 1 minute spent per connection request. Yeah, so if you spend half an hour a day on LinkedIn, you can do your business wonders.
Okay,
So
1 minute per request. So that's like
max,
just 400 minutes per all connection requests for the entire month,
yeah.
right? And then per conversation, maybe spending 10 minutes a conversation or fewer.
So it's usually to send the messages again, so you don't send 400 messages in a day again. So you send about 25 messages again. So usually you have a templated copy inside wherein you are changing a few things for the prospect. So again, to send out a message, anywhere between 1 minute to 3 minutes should be the max. If you're spending more than 3 minutes, probably not worth it. Yeah. So you will get faster with time as well again. So yes, in a way to send about like 200 ish. Yeah. So like I said, yeah. So probably in a day you should aim for about 30 messages in a day. I think like 30 to 40 messages in a day is like a good number again. So yeah, so that's the thing you want to target. So it's about anywhere between 1 to 2 hours a day at maximum again. So basically, so all in all, if you're spending anywhere between 1 to 2 hours on LinkedIn for connection requests plus messaging, right? So I think you should be able to hit at least like 10 meetings in a month on LinkedIn again.
Got it.
So that's
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Uh, I think that's all we have for now. We can definitely do a follow. If you guys like this, you want to follow up on how can you scale this further? How can you maybe, figure out, how can you personalize this quite a bit more? Obviously, like Vinith is the guy to ask for how to personalize this, right? Because again, he runs the company lead labs, and that's that become personalization. So, if you'd want to understand any of this, just let us know. We can do a follow up session on just maybe outbound personalization, anything else that you want us to cover for the next one. Again, thank you so much, Vineet, for doing this. I
Yeah,
really, really
sounds
appreciate this.
perfect. Like, so would love a follow up as well. Yes, and suppose if you guys loved it.
Yeah,
Yes, and kind of like a big thanks to, let's say, Ishan for hosting me today as well. So this like, so thank you all for the people that have attended today. So basically, I'm using us. It
yeah,
was a good time with you guys.
awesome. Vineet, I'll drop your LinkedIn profile in the comments. If anyone wants to connect with Vineet, have any follow up questions, please like just connect with him, send him a message there. Awesome.
Feel free.
Yeah,
Yeah, awesome, Nixa. Thank you,
yeah.
guys.
Thank you.